I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. 3 days a week, around 4:10 p.m., I'd show up at the coffee shop across from the bus depot. It was the kind of place with warped wooden tables, a single barista humming along to 90s playlists, and a chalkboard that hadn't changed specials in months. She always came in around 4:30. First, it was coincidence. I'd be halfway through whatever I was pretending to read, and she'd pass by my table. Neat slacks, cardigan sleeves pushed up, keys always in her hand like she didn't plan to stay long. She moved like someone used to being on the clock. Someone who didn't linger unless she meant to. I didn't know her name then. Still don't, actually. She just started noticing me. Or maybe I started noticing her noticing me. It wasn't dramatic. First time, she nodded, small, like we'd both recognized each other from somewhere. Second time, she asked if the seat across from me was taken. It wasn't. She didn't sit, just balanced her coffee cup on the edge for a moment, then moved to a table near the window. We never really talked, but on the 5th or 6th day, when I got up to leave, she glanced at me and said, "You forgot your book yesterday." I paused, holding the door open. "You kept it?" I asked. She nodded once, barely smiling. Didn't want the rain to get it. That night I opened the book, a second-hand Murakami with the spine nearly split, and found a folded receipt tucked inside. On the back, she'd written, "You don't finish your coffee. Just noticed." I don't know what hit harder, the fact that she'd watched long enough to see that, or the realization that no one else in my life probably would've. I didn't reply. What could I say? Thanks for observing my bad habits? But the next day I drank the whole cup. She had the kind of presence you had to lean into. Quiet. Still. Like if you moved too fast, you'd scare her off, or worse, miss something important. Sometimes she'd sit nearby and scribble in a little red notebook. Other times she'd just watch people come and go. I found myself doing the same. One day I tried a joke. She ordered chamomile, always chamomile, and I said, "You're the only person under 60 who drinks that on purpose." She looked at me, not annoyed, not amused either, and said, "I'm 46. I blinked. "I didn't mean." She laughed, soft and short. "Relax. I said under 60, didn't I?" After that, I started coming in a little earlier. She started staying a little later. My phone is full of half-written texts I never sent her. Stuff like, "Do you want to sit here today? You write too? What's your name?" None of them ever sounded right. But yesterday, just as she was packing up, she paused at my table, looked me in the eye, really looked, and said, "You don't have to be so careful around me." Then she smiled like it cost her something, like she'd been waiting her whole life just to say that. And I didn't say anything. I watched her leave. She left her red notebook behind. She came back for the notebook the next day. Didn't sit. Just walked in, scanned the room, and saw me already holding it. Cover closed, edges slightly frayed from where I'd turned it over too many times trying to decide if I'd read a page. "You didn't peek?" she asked, half teasing, half uncertain. I shrugged. "Thought about it." She raised an eyebrow, waiting. "I didn't," I added. She took it from my hands like it was something delicate. "I would have forgiven you," she said quietly. Then she walked past my table and, for the first time, actually sat down. We didn't speak for a while. She opened the notebook, then closed it again. Her fingers hovered on the spine. "You always read Murakami?" she asked eventually. "Not always. Sometimes Baldwin. Sometimes books I don't finish." She smiled at that. "I used to read with my son, when he was younger. Now he just sends me Spotify links and half-texts from college." There was a pause. I hadn't known she had a son. Of course she did. "Oh," I said. "Cool. What's he study?" "Film. Like you, right?" I looked up, surprised. "You have a camera bag," she explained. "And you people always sit with your backs to the windows." "You people?" She laughed into her cup. "Aspiring artists. Or lonely boys with time to kill." I didn't answer. There was a closeness that had started to hang in the air, quiet but undeniable. We'd sit in silence now like it meant something, like it was allowed. like we'd already said 100 things. Still, the math didn't go away. I was 23, and she had a life, an ex-husband, maybe, a son not much younger than me, a world that had kept spinning while mine still felt like it was idling in neutral. That should have made the distance easier to keep. But it didn't. Later that week, the coffee machine broke mid-shift. She was already seated when I arrived, thermos in hand. "Made some at home," she said, setting it down between us. "You can have some. It's not poison." I poured a little into my paper cup. It was sweeter than I expected. "I used to bring tea for my son before his exams," she said absently. "He used to think it helped." I didn't tell him I added sugar just so he'd stop making that face. I smiled into the cup, but I could feel her watching me. "You remind me of him a little," she said. I nodded slowly. "That's a weird thing to say." "It is," she admitted, "but not how you think." When she left, she touched my shoulder lightly as she passed. Just a brush of fingers. Barely anything. But I sat there for a long time after, hand resting on the spot like I might lose it if I moved too quickly. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. She didn't show up on Monday. Or Wednesday. I tried to play it cool like I hadn't noticed. But by Friday I was early. Sat by the window. 2 cups this time. Just in case. She came in late, nearly 5. Same cardigan. But her hair was pulled back like she'd rushed here, or debated coming at all. She saw the extra cup. Paused. Then sat anyway. "Sorry," she said, not really looking at me. "Work ran late." I nodded. Didn't say it was fine. Didn't say I'd been waiting. She noticed the second cup, didn't touch it. Just let it sit between us like a question we weren't ready to ask. "Do you ever wonder what people think?" she said suddenly, tracing the rim of her own cup with a finger. "Like watching us. Do we look strange?" I swallowed. "I think we look like people drinking tea." She almost smiled. "You're kind. That's dangerous." That was the first time we didn't fall into easy silence. Everything felt closer. Too close. I caught myself glancing at her hands again. She'd taken off a ring, or maybe it had always been off. A faint mark still there, pale against her skin. I looked away. She saw. Of course she saw. "I was married," she said softly, like we were both just tired of not saying things. "It ended. Not recently, but endings have echoes, don't they?" I nodded again. But it wasn't that I didn't want to speak. I just didn't trust what might come out if I did. Someone walked in. Familiar voice. "Yo, man, is that you?" I turned. Sam. A guy from uni, same class 2 years ago. Grinned like we were still close. He glanced at her, then back at me. Smirked. "Didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not," I said quickly, standing halfway, not sure if I was blocking her or myself. When he left, she leaned back a little. Guarded now, chin slightly lifted, the easy rhythm gone. "I should go," she said, collecting her things. I didn't plan to stay long. I felt something drop in my chest. "Did I?" "No," she said, cutting me off. "It's not you. Just, it's all suddenly very visible." I followed her outside. No real plan. Just didn't want her to walk away like that. She turned to face me under the awning. Rain starting, light and steady. I wanted to say something. Anything. But I just stood there, fingers twitching at my side. She took a breath, opened her mouth, closed it, and then she reached up, brushed something from my cheek. A drop? Nothing? Her fingers lingered longer than they needed to. I leaned in just slightly. She didn't move. Not forward. Not back. The rain picked up. A bus passed, loud and blinding. When it cleared, she was already stepping away. "I'll see you," she said, voice soft. "Maybe." We walked without saying much. Side by side, hands in our own pockets, steps not quite synced. The park wasn't far from the coffee shop. Small, tucked between 2 streets like it was only there for people who needed to disappear for a little while. She'd asked if I wanted air. I said yes too quickly. The sun was low but sharp, cutting shadows through the trees. She squinted into it. I watched her from the side, trying not to. I saw you with someone, I said. Came out before I could sand it down. She stopped walking, tilted her head slightly. When? Last week. Outside the bookstore. Looked like, I don't know. You smiled different. She looked at me for a second too long, then sat on a bench. His name's Adrian, she said. We dated once. Years ago. I sat, but not too close. You still see him? She gave a soft, dry laugh. I see people. That's what adults do. It stung more than it should have. Maybe because she didn't say you're not one of them. I stared ahead. Couple walked by with a dog. The leash pulled tight and then relaxed. They moved in rhythm, like it had taken time to get there. Why do you keep coming back? I asked. To the cafe. To me. She was quiet. Then, because I feel safe with you. The words felt small but heavy, like she didn't say them often. But that's not enough, is it? I said. She didn't answer right away. Just sat, fingers laced, twisting a ring that wasn't there anymore. You make me forget, she whispered. I turned to her. Forget what? That I'm supposed to know better. We didn't look at each other. Do you? I stopped, swallowed. She looked at me, eyes tired but clear. What? I shook my head. Nothing. No, she said, soft but firm. Say it. My voice broke without sound. I tried to gather it. Then finally, do you think about me when I'm not there? A gust of wind caught the edge of her scarf. She didn't fix it, just stared at me like she couldn't decide whether to lie. I try not to, she said. That should have hurt. But it didn't. Not in the way I expected. Because it was honest. Because it meant she did. We sat there, both too still. Like if either of us moved, something would happen we couldn't undo. She looked down. Her hand was closer now, resting on the bench between us. I almost reached for it. Almost. But she turned her head slightly. Just enough to say, not yet. So I stayed like that, frozen in the space between want and restraint. Then she asked, almost to the wind, do you really think this can end well? She stopped coming. First, I made excuses for her. Long work week. Family stuff. Cold maybe. By day 4, I knew I was lying to myself. She'd chosen the silence. And it wasn't loud enough to chase. Just quiet enough to make me doubt whether I'd ever been invited in at all. I kept showing up. Same table. Same coffee I never finished. Same glance toward the door every time it opened and it wasn't her. A week passed. Then another. Then, one afternoon, I saw her through the cafe window, across the street, standing with a boy who couldn't have been much younger than me. They looked like they were arguing softly, not angrily, just carefully. Like they both knew they could say the wrong thing too easily. He was holding a stack of books. She took one from his hands, then smoothed his jacket like it was a habit she couldn't break. He left without hugging her. She didn't come inside. That night I opened my notes app and typed, I didn't know you had a son that age. I don't know if that changes things. Maybe it should. Maybe it already has. Then deleted it. Rewrote it as, you okay? Then deleted that too. The next time I saw her, she wasn't alone. I was walking out of a corner store, plastic bag swinging at my side, when I spotted her across the parking lot with a man. He was older, maybe her age, button shirt, comfortable in his own skin. She was laughing, not politely. I stood behind a parked car, half hidden, like a coward, like a kid spying on something grown up. She didn't see me. I walked home slower than usual. Didn't check my phone that night. A few days later, I found the red notebook in my backpack. I'd forgotten it was there. Pages still blank past the ribbon-marked center. A receipt was tucked between pages again. A different one. I hadn't put it there. Thank you for not saying what you wanted to say. I wasn't ready to hear it. No date. No signature. Just that. I didn't know if it meant, keep going or please stop. Didn't know if she left it or if I'd imagined it there the whole time. The next morning I walked to the cafe. Sat at our old table. Ordered her usual without thinking. Waited until the cup went cold. She didn't show, didn't text, didn't exist almost, except she did. In every corner of that place. In every empty seat that wasn't hers. I drafted another message. If I sit there tomorrow, would you sit with me again? I watched the cursor blink. And blink. And blink. Then locked my phone and left the cafe. The cup was still full. The chair still empty. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. She opened the door in socks and a sweater that looked like it had been pulled off the back of a chair. No makeup. Hair tied low, loose. Like I'd caught her in the middle of something domestic, laundry, maybe, or thinking. I almost apologized. She didn't look surprised to see me. Just tired. Or maybe past pretending not to be. I didn't text, I said. I noticed. Did you want me to? She didn't answer right away. Just stepped back enough for me to come in if I wanted to. I hesitated. Then I did. Her apartment was small. Lived in. Faint smell of ginger and detergent. A half-read book face down on the couch cushion. Mugs in the sink. I stood near the kitchen counter while she filled the kettle. Neither of us said anything until the click of the burner broke the silence. I wasn't avoiding you, she said, facing the stove. Her back was straighter than it needed to be. You were, I said. But I get it. She turned, leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Do you? I nodded. You have a life. You're supposed to know better. I remind you of things. Your son. Your past. The wrongness of it. Her eyes didn't move. And what do I remind you of? I looked at the floor, then at her hands. Of what it feels like when someone actually sees me. She exhaled. Slow. Not relief. More like resignation. You scare me, she said. Not because you're reckless, but because you're careful. Because you notice. And I can't afford to be noticed that way. I stepped forward, but not close. Just enough so she wouldn't have to raise her voice. Then why'd you let it get this far? She gave a small, humorless laugh. You think this is far? I shrugged. Farther than I thought you'd let me. She looked at me like she was deciding something. Like she wanted to believe there was a version of this that didn't hurt anyone. I don't know what you want, she said. I don't either, I admitted. Not really. I just know that not seeing you feels worse than seeing you and not knowing what this is. She closed her eyes, rested a hand lightly on the counter. The kettle began to boil. She didn't move. When she looked back up, her eyes were glassy. Not crying, but close, like she'd been holding a breath too long. You didn't do anything wrong, she said. You were just kind at the wrong time. I stepped forward. Close enough now. I don't need this to be anything. Not today. Not defined. I stopped myself. She reached out, almost absent-mindedly, and rested her hand over mine on the counter. Her fingers barely curled. Just enough. We stood like that, not touching exactly, not pulling away either. She looked up at me, tired, honest. Okay, she said softly. She still drinks chamomile. We meet twice a week now, not always at the cafe. Sometimes the park. Sometimes her place, where the kettle hums and her bookshelf tilts a little to one side. I fix it every few weeks. It always leans back. I stopped expecting big moments. Turns out nothing really changed all at once. There was no long speech, no scene where everything clicked. Just small things. Soft habits. One day she brought 2 cups to the bench, 1 black coffee, 1 tea. No questions. Another day I found my book tucked into her shelf, wedged between Baldwin and a cookbook. She never mentioned putting it there. She told her son eventually, said she didn't owe him an explanation, but gave him one anyway. He didn't love it, but he didn't leave either. I'm still his mother, she said one evening, folding laundry on her couch. And he's still learning I'm a person. I asked her once, weeks later, if she thought us had a future. She looked up, folding a towel in half, then in half again. We have a present, she said. That's more than I had before. I still write her unsent texts sometimes. It's a habit I haven't shaken. Things like, you looked really tired today. I wanted to hold your hand, but your son was there. Or I don't know what to do when you're quiet like that. But I want to wait with you anyway. I don't send them. Don't need to. She gets it. Mornings are my favorite now. Sometimes she texts at 8:47 a.m., always exactly, with just a single word. Bench? And I know she means the one near the park entrance, where the breeze cuts sharp and the world slows down just enough. One morning, I brought her a thermos. Not tea. Not coffee. Just hot water with ginger and honey. Something softer. She took a sip, then gave me this small look, almost a smile, but not quite, like her body remembered something before her mouth did. You remembered, she said quietly. I didn't answer, just nodded and looked out across the grass. We sat there in silence, the kind that isn't heavy anymore, the kind that feels like being known. The world didn't stop for us. It just bent a little, made room. There are still gaps between us. Age, time, what we can say in front of others. But the distance feels different now. Less like a wall, more like a hallway we walk through slowly. She reaches for my hand sometimes, doesn't always hold it, just lets our fingers rest close enough to know we're here. Today, as we got up from the bench, she looked back at the seat, brushed a leaf off the wood like it mattered. Then she turned to me and said, "You never did answer." I raised an eyebrow. Answer what? That first question I asked you, she said, at the cafe. When I said, "Do you think this can end well?" She didn't wait for a reply this time, just took my hand, warm in hers. We kept walking. I don't know if it ended well, but it began again. And maybe that's better. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next? Ask ChatGPT.